or you can say name of random variable, right? So we'll keep these terms going on. So right, so name of a function or a random variable. So we say name should be written in a capital letter, for example x. It could be xy, something like that, but normally it is written x as the name of the function, and that is the variable part. I think closest to random variable, this letter x, capital, that too is a variable part. Otherwise it has no link with being a variable or being random. You will realize how. So first thing is we decide about a function x, and then the second part is we define our function, right? So we define function. Defining function means what? We are saying random function is to associate each outcome in the sample space with a real number. So we have to convert these outcomes into numbers. That is what really the random variables function is. Okay, so we say we'll define x as a function, and the description is given here. You could say number of heads. For example, you understand, so just count the number of heads. Now in this particular case, we have defined our random variable by the name x, and the definition is number of heads. I could, make many combinations. We could say number of tails, we could say difference of heads and tails, like that. So whatever you are interested in from the outcome of an experiment or whatever event you are working with, you can analyze that event further with the help of random variables or random functions. So that's the whole idea, is to take it to the next level. So till now we have calculated probabilities for single events, and now we'll look into the group as a whole and see how we can work better with the information we have and draw some other conclusions, right? So that's the whole idea of probability distribution, defining random variables, and then whatever we do next. Okay, so that's the idea of complicating it. Okay, now we have understood that a random variable should be written in a capital letter, could be x, could be y, whatever, and then you have to define your function. That is, how am I going to associate this random function with the set of outcomes I have in hand, right? So in this case I'm saying I will associate my random variable capital X as number of heads, right? So if I do that, in that case what happens? Now see what. So what we have here, let me make a table and show it to you what is happening here. Okay, now another important thing here is that we have to list all the outcomes, and here in this case we have a case where we have finite number of outcomes, right? Very limited, just 4. So we can write all the outcomes here. So we have 2 heads, or we have head or a tail, or we have tail or head, or we have 2 tails, correct? So that is what we have in our sample space, right? All the possible outcomes. Now in this case we have defined our random variable as number of heads. So in the first case, this particular, let's say these are these 4 outcomes we are talking about in our space. So we say this is my 2 heads. So the number of heads here is how many? 2. Right? How many heads are here? Just number 1. How many heads in this case? 1. How many heads in this case? 0. Do you see that? So in this particular case, the random variable x, which is defined as the number of heads when 2 coins are tossed simultaneously. Do you understand, right? So that is the case we are working with, right? And we say that this number, this random variable, will always have a number associated with it. You see, so we say random variable will always have a real number. I should write real number as an output. Let's say as an output, since we are calling it a function, as an output. Does it make sense to you, right? So in this case, what are those real numbers? Well, generally if I say capital X, let me write here, capital X is my random variable, right? So then we write the outputs as xi, right? So we designate by a lowercase x and subscript